Hey everybody, thank you so much for joining us again for a Wednesday night Bible study with the West Main Church of Christ. This is our family devotional, meant for families, teens, kids, and anybody that may or may not like Pixar movies, but we'll get to that. If you've been keeping up with these videos, you know that I enjoy starting these things off with something a little bit what we call our fun thoughts, just something to kind of get our minds away from everything that's going on right now. And I thought this week would be really cool to dive into the realm of music. If you keep up with me or any of my stuff, if you know me, you keep up with our stuff online, like my blog or our podcast that we put out there, you'll know that music has and still is a very big part of my life. And so one of the things I love about music is how it impacts so many different people in so many different ways. It stirs up emotions in you. It has the ability to say things that are just really hard to say. And so I just thought it'd be fun to talk about that for a few minutes. I want to know, what is your Mount Rushmore of music look like? Artists that you have personally inspired you, that you have connections to, that influenced your taste in music. I've put together my list based on all those things, as well as just overall musicianship, I guess, people that I think are personally just fantastic artists. One of the great things about this is my Mount Rushmore could look absolutely nothing like yours, and I think that's really, really cool. But here you go. This is my Mount Rushmore of music. Number one, Vince Gill. There are probably every single one of you teens and little kids or younger kids are probably looking at your parents and going, who's Vince Gill? I've never heard of this guy. Vince Gill is an incredible singer-songwriter. He's a country music artist. In fact, story goes that a lot of my younger life, when I was really little, my grandmother actually used to call me Little Vince, because she was on her way to a Vince Gill concert when I was born. And so they would swing by the hospital, and then they went on and went to the concert. But Vince Gill is an awesome artist. He's an incredible vocalist. He's just a phenomenal singer. One of his more fun songs is Oklahoma Borderline, but I think all of his songs are pretty great. So Vince Gill is on there. Number two for me is Billy Joel. I don't really know why. I just really, really like Billy Joel's music. I think he's a really good musician. I think he's a fantastic storyteller in the way that he writes his songs. Scenes from an Italian Restaurant is one of my personal favorites. Of course, everybody knows Piano Man is one of those things out there. But Billy Joel, I think, is just really, really awesome. Number three for me is Daly and Vincent. I know this is a little bit cheating because there's technically two of them. But Daly and Vincent, and for those of you that don't know who that is, they're part of a bluegrass band, and there were a lot of different names that I kind of went through here and thought could have been put in this spot. Dole Lawson, Quicksilver, Flatt & Scruggs, Appalachian Road, but I went with Daly and Vincent because Daly and Vincent was probably the very first group that I listened to when I started listening to bluegrass. And I don't know how much I would know about bluegrass if it hadn't been for those guys. So I put them on here. It's a little bit cheating because I tried to stay away from bands as a whole because that could be a whole nother topic of conversation. But I went with Daly and Vincent. If you haven't ever listened to their album, it's just called Daly and Vincent Sing the Statler Brothers, which is another group that could have gone here. You probably should. It's really phenomenal. But bluegrass, I love bluegrass music, and they kind of got that started for me. And then number four, by far and away, the newest and youngest artist on my Mount Rushmore of music is Luke Combs. Luke Combs, I don't think that guy knows how to write a bad song. I really don't. In fact, there's a story as he was goofing off in his garage one night during all this quarantine, and he wrote a song, and he literally played it on YouTube the very next day, and it went viral and was one of the top 5 trending songs on YouTube. That song is called 6 Feet Apart. It's available for download this Friday, actually. But Luke Combs, I love Luke Combs. I think that there's so much about him that is fantastic and good for music. He didn't really start playing guitar full time until he was 26 years old. He didn't really know who he was until he kind of got into music, and he was able to find himself. And I think that's really incredible. But there you go. Those four, that is my Mount Rushmore of music. I'd love to know what your Mount Rushmore is. Comment on Facebook or wherever you find this video. I don't know that you can actually comment on YouTube. And I learned this, right? Because as a church, we mark all of our videos safe for children because, quite frankly, they are. We do make all of these so that younger kids can watch. But when you mark your videos safe for children on YouTube, it actually disables the comment section. So find this on Facebook. Let me know what your Mount Rushmore of music is, and we're going to dive into and continue a series that I'm excited about. I hope that you are excited about. If you've been keeping track of these videos, you know that series is called Real Spirituality, and we've been going through Pixar movie after Pixar movie, and we've just been having a really good time doing this. And I felt like music was a great segue into this week's lesson because we are going to be going over the movie Coco. Coco is a fantastic movie, and just so you know, the Real Spirituality series, as much as we're excited about it, it does only have a few weeks left, so be sure to stay tuned for that. But as I said, we're going to talk about Coco. Coco revolves around a young boy named Miguel, who is in love with music. He loves it. His family does not. His family actually rejects music as a whole. And during this movie, they're celebrating the Mexican holiday, the Day of the Dead. I'm not going to try to say it in Spanish because I would butcher it, and nobody wants to hear me do that on YouTube. Okay, but they're celebrating what we would refer to as the Day of the Dead. And it's a really cool holiday. And anyway, Miguel ends up having this big blow up with his family. And he ends up becoming lost in the land of the dead. And so the whole movie revolves around his quest on getting back home to his living family. It is an incredible movie. It's touching. It has so many different storylines throughout it. It is fantastic. It is probably one of the best musical scores in a Pixar movie, period, as well as, in my opinion, the best animation work that Pixar has ever done. So if you haven't seen it, you should. Spoilers for this video, but that is okay. Don't let that prevent you from watching this, and we're going to dive right into it. If you're familiar with these videos, you'll know that there are announcements from our West Main family at the end of this video, but we're going to look at 3 main points from the biggest storyline throughout the course of the movie and how we apply those to our lives as Christians. So here we go. Number 1, embrace your talents. Embrace the talent that you have, okay? In the movie, Miguel belongs to a family of shoemakers. Nothing wrong with making shoes in any way, form, or fashion, but none of them like music, and you get the backstory of that in the movie. But the big talent that Miguel has is his ability as a musician. I don't know that the movie specifies how old he is, but he plays the guitar, he sings, he performs, and he's very, very good at it. He has that natural talent. And throughout the course of the movie, Miguel is going to use that talent in order to reach his goals and to bring people closer together. And that's really cool. There's a common parable found in Matthew chapter 25, starting in verse 14, where Jesus is going to tell the story of a master who entrusts 3 of his servants with different portions of money. To one servant he gives 5 talents, to one he gives 2, and to one he gives 1. 2 servants went out and they put their money to work, and when the master comes back, they're able to give him a double portion of what they earned. So the one who had 5 was able to give him 10, and the one who had 2 was able to give him 4. But the parable also tells of a servant who had the 1 talent, and when the master came back, he said, "I was afraid, knowing you were a hard man. I went and I hid your money in the ground. And there you have what is yours." And the master rebukes this servant and says, "You wicked and slothful servant." And he punishes him. He says, "That's not what you were supposed to do with the gifts that I had given you." The point here for Christians is that God has blessed us with talents. Even sometimes when we don't realize the talents that we have, that others see in us, that maybe we don't see in ourselves, or the ones that we think are there but we're not totally sure, we have talents. Everybody has been blessed with a talent. And it is our responsibility to use those talents as much as we possibly can to glorify God. 1 Corinthians 12, 5, and 6, as well as 1 Peter chapter 4, 10, and 11, further emphasize why we should be ready to use the gifts that God has given us. And it's really funny right now in a world where we are constantly debating who is and who is not considered essential, right? The Apostle Paul makes it very clear that when it comes to the body of Christ, all members are considered essential. And how cool is that to think about, that you and I have been blessed with gifts and talents by God. Possibly a gift or a talent that nobody else in the world has. Why would we not want to use those? And right now, not only have we been blessed with a talent, but we've also been blessed with an opportunity to use those talents in a completely new and creative way. So we need to be sure to embrace our talents. Okay, number 2, we need to remember that people have a story. Everybody's got a story. Everybody is the way that they are for some sort of reason. And I've talked about Miguel is part of a family that doesn't like music in this movie. And you get little pieces of that here and there, but there's a moment in this movie where Miguel is arguing with his great-great-grandmother. And he's saying, you don't understand me, you'll never understand, you don't even like music, how could you understand me as a musician? And it gets very dramatic for a second. And then he starts to run off, and all of a sudden his great-great-grandmother starts to sing, and there's this pause. And he's like, I thought you hated music. And she said, no. She said, I loved music. Music was incredible. And what you're going to find out is it's not that they've always hated music, it's that they began to resent music when a family member put music over family. And the priorities changed, and that allowed them or began this resentment toward that. One thing that we have to remember as we see our society edging more and more back into reopening more and more things, that there's nobody who's going to be the exact same on the other side of this as they were going in. And maybe that's for a good thing, but sometimes it might be for a bad thing. And we have to be sure that we remember that everybody has a past that influences their future, but that past is not as important as where we can be moving forward. For Christians, it's going to be really important to remember all the time, but especially as we start getting back to normal, not to be quick to judge the decisions of others, not to be quick to put our preconceived notions on somebody's decision making. Just because somebody isn't necessarily comfortable coming back right away doesn't mean that they're a weak Christian or that we should ridicule them for that. And just because there are some that do want to come back doesn't mean that we need to view them as only socially irresponsible and selfish because they want to embrace being back with one another. There are pasts that in fact impact the future, but we need to be sure that we focus on where we can go as opposed to where we've been. Imagine what the New Testament would look like if the past of Paul or Saul had prevented him from getting a fair shot at spreading the word of God. What if he didn't have anybody there to vouch for him or to encourage the others to allow him to be a part of what was going on? Imagine how differently the New Testament would have looked if Jesus himself had only operated under the preconceived notions of people's past. See, Jesus knew what the past was. He focused and met people where they were, and then he prioritized where they could be going. And the church needs to be worried about where we're going to go from here as opposed to where we've been. And number 3, last one this evening, embrace your family. If you haven't figured it out already, basically the entire theme of the book of Coco, or the movie of Coco, is revolved around this idea of family. Miguel is trying to get back to his family. He wants to embrace his family. He wants to bring his family together. The whole movie, he's trying to track down a family blessing. And you and I are blessed to be part of a family that has one common goal, one common faith, and one common God. And that is incredible. And we need to be able to embrace that. Hebrews chapter 10, verses 24 and 25 says, let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another all the more as you see the days drawing near. Romans 12:10 says, love one another with brotherly affection. And Ephesians chapter 2 and verse 19 tells us that we are no longer strangers, but fellow citizens and members of the household of God, that we are all collectively together as one body, as one family. And that is an incredible blessing. Now more than ever, we need to know what it's like to be a part of that family, to embrace each other. Don't underestimate what the family of God has the ability to accomplish in the midst of trials. It is that family that we're so excited about seeing again and embracing again and being with one another. So we need to cherish that, and we need to remember that we all have the same goal. It may not look the same right now, but we're all wanting to accomplish the same thing, and we all can be there for one another to glorify Him. Guys, thank you so much for sticking to with this video. I'll go ahead and confess to you all, this was actually my second take. The first time I did this video, I got completely done, and it said my video file was corrupted. So, yay for that. But I do have a few more announcements for my West Main family. If you'll stick around for just a second, I want you guys to know that everything in May has officially been canceled. I know, I'm sorry, but our area-wide for the month of May has been canceled. Our devotionals for the month of May have been canceled as well. If you had a calendar, you will notice that at the very end of May, we also had our annual cornhole tournament scheduled to be up at the Face, where we had hot dogs and had the 30-year age difference cornhole tournament. That has been canceled for now. We'll do everything we can to see if we can't get that to happen sometime later in the year, but for right now, it will not happen in the month of May. Remember to get me entries from you for West Main's Got Talent. We've got judges that are eagerly awaiting some more entries, and I want to again make this very clear. This is for everybody. This is for absolutely everybody. I don't care if you're 8 or if you're 88. You don't have to sing. If you're good at throwing a baseball, show me how good you are at throwing a baseball. If you're good at gymnastics, get on a trampoline and do a quadruple backflip. If you're good at photography, send in a video of you teaching a photography class or painting or anything at all. We want to be able to embrace the family that we've got and to celebrate one another's talents all across the board. Okay, so be sure to get those to me by this Friday at 5 o'clock. We have a lot of people that are excited about that, and I really want this to be as much fun as possible. Okay, if you are a senior in high school or college and you are or were supposed to graduate in May, please get me your form. I know I've contacted quite a few of you already. I think all of our high school seniors, the moms, have those forms. If you don't have one of those forms, get in touch with me. I'll be sure to get one of those to you. But we want to be sure that we do provide you all with some recognition this year, despite the fact that this has got to go down in record as one of the craziest senior years, at least in our lifetimes. Okay, so be sure to do that for me. As always, stay connected on our website, on YouTube, on Facebook, with phone calls, with text messages, with cards, with social distance, drive-by waving. Stay connected with one another. We are part of a family. I know that a lot of us are probably getting to that point where we're on edge and we're trying to figure out when we could possibly, when this is possibly going to all be over, and we're struggling with that right now. But I promise you, staying connected will do so much good for you. Okay, if you need anything at all, please, as always, be sure to remember, call myself, call Carrie, call one of our elders or deacons, and please let us know how we can help you. Okay, remember, everybody, that we love you, that God loves you, and we are so looking forward to being back with you together again.